Hi, everyone. This is Corinne, and we want to welcome you back to Streets and Eats. This week, we're going to be talking once again to Phoebe. We talked to her last week and just didn't get enough of her. So we've got her on again. If you missed her intro, check out last week's podcast. But this week, podcast number 30 is all about the French gîte. That's an accommodation, sort of like an Airbnb or a rental home that you can get in France, and they are amazing. We've stayed in them many times. And Phoebe happens to own one, so she's going to talk to us all about French gîtes.
Welcome to Streets and Eats, the travel and food podcast dedicated to taking our listeners to the sights, sounds, and flavors of fascinating places near and far, both on and off the beaten path. We're Jim and Corinne Vale, and we've been traveling internationally and domestically together for decades, visiting more than 90 countries in all 50 states in the USA. We'll share all of the local knowledge and food expertise we've gathered through years of living as expats in Asia and Europe, as well as traveling with families spanning multiple generations around the world. Join us each week for a new adventure.
Nowadays, with Airbnb, a lot more people are know how to sort of get an apartment. You could always do VRBO or, Home Away is one of them. And then in France, there is the whole, and I don't remember the website, but the Gîte website that we used to check all the time too, which I loved. But can you explain what a Gîte is? And
Sure. I mean, in a nutshell, a Gîte really is just there are different types of gîtes, but in general, it refers to a self-catering vacation rental or, cottage or apartment, just like you say, just like an Airbnb, really. But there are different types because there are something called the gîte d'étape, which is it's usually a big type of gîte, almost like a dormitory, almost more like
hostel.
It's like more like a hostel that's étape means a stage, so it's on a stage of a journey. So you might find it, on something like the equivalent of the Camino might have a gîte d'étape. So I was listening to your recent podcast about the people who went from hut to hut in the Dolomites. Those huts, while they're refuge, they're not gîte d'étape, but a gîte d'étape is a little bit more like that sort of thing. Anyway, that's not what I am. Then there's there's other places, but in general, a gîte really does just mean, it used to mean quite a basic holiday vacation rental, self-catering. Some gîtes will have the option to have a meal provided, but France, I'm sure you can guess, is very bureaucratic. So if you provide a meal, you're probably not a gîte. You're probably actually a chambre d'hôte or something else. But most gîtes, like I say, just a holiday apartment or a holiday cottage. And there is a category of gîte de charme, which means a charming gîte. So those are the ones that have a bit more character. It's not necessarily an exact category, but I would say that my place is a gîte de charme. We don't just offer the basics. We're far from luxury. I'd never use the word luxury in my marketing because that's not what I'm about. But it's a comfortable and cozy and really nice homely place to stay.
And you got a pool
where you get. Sorry, I didn't
And you have a pool.
Yeah, we have a pool and we have a big garden, and we live on site. In fact, because we built our own house, and we built it such that the gîte is we're on a hill, and so our bit is on the top level, and the gîte's on the garden level. But we also have a garden. It's just the way the layout is, and so we're fully independent in that there's no communicating doors or anything. No, we could never just walk in on the people staying here, but we are on the same property. And so therefore we're around to advise, help, and, socialize with if people want. And I think this is the beauty of it. Obviously there are plenty of gîtes without the hosts living on site. But in our case, it's very independent, and yet we're here. So, we play it by ear where the people, you get a good feeling. I've been doing this 12 years now.
Sure.
Get a good feeling of if people are keen to chat and to pick your brain and to, and obviously sometimes this has come out in the booking process anyway, all the emails to and forth, you've sort of had a good idea that this, that you're going to have a good rapport and you're going to definitely be chatting and socializing together. And, we've had many people here who we end up having, wonderful boozy evenings together. But then, you also get lots of people who that's not why they're coming. They're coming because, it's in a good location for them and it's a good price, et cetera, et cetera. And, we're like, bonjour, bonjour, and we see them and au revoir at the end, and that's it. But the pandemic has somewhat changed all that. I mean, obviously we get way less international guests now. And it tended to be the guests who were, coming from, let's say, we've had people from literally all over the world. We've had Azerbaijanis, we've had Ukrainians, we've had, obviously tons of Americans and Canadians, and we've had Brazilians and Icelanders and Singaporeans and Koreans and, and everything in between. Yeah. Obviously in the last year, it's been much more French, a few Belgians, a few Dutch, and they are just coming sort of for their, either to see family in the area or for their sort of summer holiday to get some sun and lie by the pool. Not all of them, but they're much more just booking our place because it's a convenient place and not because of the story behind it. And we used to get many more, one of our first ever lot of guests when we first opened was a couple from Patagonia who didn't speak any English and we didn't speak any Spanish. And, lots of gestures. And amazingly enough, this is how Google Translate has come on. When we started only 12 years ago, you couldn't just use Google Translate to help you. I mean, it just didn't exist, Right. Obviously, we have notions of Spanish because it's close enough to French it wasn't like trying to communicate with Koreans or something. But, they came and we still had a lovely evening together. And the woman, she was really tired and she slept for the first 2 or 3 days and her husband was a bit lost. So he helped us plant a hedge, wow. And we had this lovely, lovely time with them. And it turned out she was an opera singer and he was a real estate agent. And he just couldn't get over the size of properties here. He just thought they were so tiny because he was selling properties, the size of Belgium and things.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
And, we had this sort of lovely, lovely experience and we got to meet them. They, heard our stories. We don't, since the pandemic, we haven't really had any of that. Also, we're supposed to not really socialize, social distancing, right. Keep apart. But the thing I love about it, hosting, and I love staying in other places, is this sort of contact and the fact that, we've lived here for 14 years, had the Gîte for 12. So we know, we can advise on so many things and, tell people our favorite hidden gems, and where to get away from the crowds. Because, of course, the Côte d'Azur, French Riviera, is famously wonderful, but it's incredibly crowded at times because it's so famous. It's, such an amazing place. But, we know where to go to beaches even in mid-August where there's no one. And we can advise people where to go to the river where there's no one. And, and so you get that sort of contact. Personally, we haven't been able to travel nearly as much as I used to. Times of life, young children, jobs and all that. So I bring the world to me. And, like I say, we've had guests from Korea and guests from Azerbaijan was one of, honestly, the most, for me, the most unusual places. Because, we all know that Koreans travel and we know that Canadians travel and we know New Zealanders, Kiwis, they travel, but you don't really.
Azerbaijanis, no.
Yeah, you don't really.
You don't meet many of them.
No, you don't. We're here. We can advise. We can socialize. We can chat. We can help out with bookings and reservations and all that sort of thing. But also we can completely leave people alone to do their own thing.
How many languages do you speak?
Oh, God. No, I should speak loads. I would only say I can speak two, French and English. I've been learning Italian for the last year and I've been doing it on Duolingo, and I can say some pretty silly things in Italian from Duolingo, like, are my shoes electric? Are my shoes electric? I mean,
that's helpful.
Yeah, it's really helpful.
Wow.
What I've always said is I can count to 10 in, I think, 10 languages. And I can.
You are so like me.
You can ask
and I can.
You first met me. That was my thing. I can count to 10 in 20 languages.
I can count to 10. I can order a beer. I can
exactly all that sort of thing. And there was, I mean, I've learned about 5 languages. There was a time when I could speak enough Vietnamese to get by in daily life. I mean, it's so hard. I'd never said I was any good at it, but I could chat to people on a basic level, and I could certainly go shopping, and I could talk to my colleagues and things. But I've forgotten the majority of that. I've learned Russian, and I had a tiny bit of Icelandic back in the day, but Icelanders speak such an amazing English. A few words in Czech, honestly.
And that does make a difference.
Yeah. But I think,
we lived in Czech for years and we don't speak Czech. Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I do love them. And so I think having a little notions of some Slavic languages, I can, pull out, when we're in Montenegro or when we're in somewhere, you can get a little notions of a few things because I have studied a bit of Russian and there's some similarities, but no, I would have to basically admit I'm not a linguist. It's as simple as that. I ought to speak many more languages, but I don't.
I can't tell you how much I totally understand everything you said, because I would tell people I speak one language, and that is English. I can get by in France. I'm sure everybody laughs at me. I'm sure it's baby French, but I can get by. I can order. I can buy things. I can get in a hotel room. I can get by. I can do those things. And they let me. So I think that's kind of important too.
Yeah, that's good.
Because a lot of places, if they don't let you, you really are horrible, right?
Yeah.
So they let me. So that's good. The same in Spanish, the same in Turkish, the same in Japanese. We lived in Korea. I did not do well with Korean. I don't know why. I came from Japan and did so well in Japan. I can still speak Japanese, conversationally pretty well. But Korean, I never learned. So, but I could never have like an extended, especially academic or really business. And German, I probably speak the best. And we lived there for years and years and years. But even then, both our jobs were in English. Jim is American. I'm American.
Well, that's it. I mean, the downside, downside of being an English speaker is that, everybody always wants to practice with you.
That's exactly right.
And I was an English teacher for years and years. And so, and even now, obviously I have a lot of French guests, but the vast majority of my guests are non-French, not necessarily English, but just non-French. And therefore we communicate in English.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's just.
Yeah. Well, it's English become the language of the world. So. Yeah, and I certainly would never call myself a linguist, but what I like to say is I won't starve to death in at least 7 different languages.
I like that. Yeah, I like that. I reckon I could say the same.
And those 7 languages will cover several different countries, so
absolutely.
I'm okay.
Yeah. That's a good way of looking at it. Well, I should change I can count to 10, but I should change it to that to say, I can eat in probably about 8 languages. Yeah.
Yeah. And it may not always be the best thing on the menu, but like I said, at least I won't starve to death.
Yeah.
Well, the key is just to ask them, what do you say? I don't know. I tried never to order without just asking, what would you tell me to eat? Sometimes I can't go with their recommendation, but almost always I will. What was the other question I had? Oh, so this has happened to us. We've been in many gîtes. We've been in many homeaways, Airbnbs, you name it, any kind of rental, hotels, everything. But one of our stumbling problems, and it is always trying to engage the host. Now, you're lucky because, if I had you for a host, which we tried, but we never actually did we?
I know, honestly, we were so close.
We will sometime, Phoebe, I promise. But anyway, you speak English. So, of course, I think it's easier. I would feel more comfortable just chatting you up. But like one time we were in, what was that town in France, Jim? Oh, gosh. Anyway, some little tiny dwarf in France. And it was a really cool little place. And we rented a gîte there. And the host wasn't on location, but there was like a manager, the person who took care of the gîte. And they lived downstairs and we were going to be upstairs. And
this is Montedi.
Montedi. Do you know where that is?
No.
Montedi.
It's a small
very
town.
cool little tiny town.
It's in the south.
It was funny because we kind of tried to chat her up a little bit, but she seemed standoffish, maybe. I don't know. She didn't seem interested. Let's just put it that way. And we're like, okay, well, sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. So I thought I gave it a little go. Well, then we go out to dinner and we come back. And she and her husband are sitting out in front smoking and drinking some wine. And they're like, come join us. I'm like, oh, like total shock, because I thought there was no way they wanted to engage with us. Yeah. Anyway, so I guess my question is there, how do you know if someone is willing to have a little conversation and like get to know you or whatever?
Like I said, I mean, you often get a really good feel just from the booking process. I am on Airbnb, of course. I mean, everyone, you have to be. And I do accept instant bookings. So, of course, I sometimes get people who just, ding, there's a booking. But even so, in general, even those people will then send me a message, and I will certainly ask them, kind of about who they, we're coming with, it's me and my wife and my toddler or my teenage kids, or so and you can almost straight away get a feeling of if they kind of want to engage with you almost from that. It's not as cut and dry as that, but I get some people. I mean, I got a booking inquiry just today that it's like, oh, I've just subscribed to your blog, I love it. I've been reading all this stuff about the area, it's amazing, I can't wait to stay, I can't wait to meet you. That sort of person is clearly going to want to chat. And, but then the other person who is just literally booking, 2 people, 5 nights, bam, you're like, And then in the flesh, when you meet them, you can tell as well. You just can,
Okay, so now you gave me an idea to be more chatty on the messages.
No, that's right. It's not as black and white as that, because it's not necessarily if somebody just sends you a really, perfunctory booking, it doesn't necessarily mean that they won't want to, of course. But once people arrive, you can sort of tell from fairly early on. Some people warm up, others don't. You can just sort of get that feeling that they kind of, they've come for their holiday and they want to be alone and they're not interested. Or, I mean, some people instantly, when you meet them, oh, hi, oh, I hear a little accent, so where are you from? And assuming, we're speaking in French, because I do have an English accent when I speak French, I'll never lose it. And so we get chatting and it goes from there. It's very rare that I misjudge it. It's really rare that I think, oh, they seem nice and chatty and they obviously want to have a good, some interaction with me, and they don't, or vice versa. So there's just a feeling. I don't know.
I just think that it's so much richer whenever you do get to, have a conversation with the host. Yeah.
I know that occasionally I get some people, I think that they think because I'm English that I'm not a local. And, because there are so many expat Brits here who aren't integrated into the community and don't speak French. And, they're not locals. I mean, they are in a sense, but I mean, that's not me. I'm married to a Frenchman and I do speak French. And my kids, while they're totally bilingual, bicultural, have spent their whole lives in France. So they would consider themselves more French than English in the end. Well, and Australian. Don't forget that we also have Australian thrown into the mix. But so I think, some people think, oh, she's not local, so we, don't want to, I don't know, that they're not going to get those insider tips and that interesting stuff from me. Some people, it's when they hear that I have a French husband and that we've been here for that long, because I've actually been in France for over 20 years. It's not just, down here for 14. Then they realize, oh, okay. And you speak French. Oh, they realize, and then they warm up. You occasionally, of course, get the person who thinks, oh, how wonderful that you're not French. I mean, that's a bit dodgy.
Yeah.
But
it's interesting.
It just can, I think sometimes the reputation of too many English in the south of France goes against me, because they just assume I'm one of those. but I am totally, I think I probably know more about this area than the vast majority of people, because I'm always exploring and always, out and about and looking for things to do and to write, because although my blog is slightly on the back burner at the moment, I haven't written much, it has been going for 12. Yeah, I've been writing for nearly 10 years. It'll be 10 years in April. So my goodness, there's a lot of...
Because I think I've been following you from the beginning.
Yeah, no, it's exactly. There's a lot of information out there, and I love, going on the trips to explore, to find places for people and things. So, once people realize that I'm not just some sort of expatty, non-involved owner, then there's often a warmth that comes through, and they'll be more likely to want to have a two-way exchange and find a bit out about me, and therefore I get to chat to them, and and we have more interaction. Have to say, in general, the French guests that I get are less interested in sort of having an apéro evening with us or whatever. I think mainly because they really are just here to have their southern France holiday, to get their sun, and they're not seeing it as sort of travels, as a cultural. We've had loads of lovely French families and couples and people stay, and of course we had some interactions together. But in general, it's the people who come from sort of the furthest away who want to pick our brains more, and
that makes sense. That makes sense.
Like you said, it's more of a travel opportunity for them, and trying to understand a new area, a new culture. So that makes sense. Yeah. So you have been able to turn your love for travel into, like you said, bringing the world to you in this case. So that's really nice.
Absolutely.
Which Jim and I have always talked about, to be honest, because we lived, as you know, outside of the United States, basically for our entire marriage until last June, when we came back because of our grandson and retired from our jobs. And so, and I can't tell you how much I miss it, although I'm not ready to jump into like a B&B or anything yet, because I still am hoping that we can go out and travel some more. But, and then that would tie you down, I think. I don't know. Does it tie you down?
Well, it does. I mean, I thought it would tie me down more. And I know a lot of people at the beginning said, oh, well, how will you ever be able to go away? And I guess at the beginning, I was much more tied to here. But now, having run this place for 12 years, I do absolutely know how I can also go away myself. And, I have a core group of people that I can delegate to and rely on if I'm away. I'm completely obsessive about it myself if I'm here, and would never let someone else run it if I'm actually around. But if I am away, I do have a few people that I can, I do trust, who can do the cleaning and the handover, the changeovers and things. But also what we do, and we have done, not since the very beginning, but probably now for 9, maybe even 10 years, is we rent out our whole house for the summer, including our bit. So it becomes a place that can sleep 10 instead of 4. And that's when we go away and do our bigger trips.
And when you rent it out for the whole summer, do you rent it?
Well, we can't. We never rent it out for the whole summer, because basically my husband has a job that he can't go away for that long. And, while we rent a local place, a small local place, we've even, stayed in campsites and things while he's still working. Before, if for instance, we rent out the house for 5 weeks, he can't go away for those 5. The longest he's ever been able to go away for a one time was 3. And so we'd stay 2 weeks locally in some, small, cheap place, or sometimes house sit friends' places or whatever. People say, oh, we're away, you can stay here. But that way, it does give us a bigger sort of time away. And because it's on a different financial level, renting it out, a house for 10 in the south of France, means that I can afford to pay a sort of manager for that. And we do kind of almost switch off, almost, not quite. We do still answer phone, and we did have, I remember, some pretty complicated guests at the beginning times when there was a heat wave, and we don't have air conditioning here, which I know shocks Americans, but it's quite normal. I'm sure you know, quite normal in Europe not to have air conditionings. And these people have come and they knew what the temperature was. They'd even talked about it in their booking process, and she even said she was brought up in this area. Anyway, they found it was too hot, so they rang us up, even though they had the local manager. We were in Bosnia, and they rang and they said, "It's too hot. We want air conditioning." We're like, "Of course. How the beep do you think we can put air conditioning in for you by tomorrow?" You know, even if, and we're also like, you know, it is our own house. We don't want air conditioning. We're not going to. Anyway, occasionally we get annoying people like that. Shouldn't really talk about the annoying guests, should I? But occasionally we get things like that, which in general, when it's our house, we have this manager to deal with that so that we can switch off. But these people didn't like dealing with the manager, and they deal directly with us. But that's very rare. So that's when we can really switch off and go away. Other times we do it out of season, you know, like right now. I mean, it's particularly quiet because it's France is, you know, COVID cases have gone mad and
everywhere.
But in general, now is a quietish time. So we might, you know, take a trip. But we do still have a school-age kid. So, of course, we're more... we have to do school holidays, but we've got school holidays coming up in 3 weeks' time, and it's a pretty quiet time here. And even if we had a booking, it would be a time when I'd feel that we might be able to go away with a booking here, you know, leaving it in the hands of other people. You can go away, but I do love my own business, and I'm very obsessive about it being exactly perfect. So I leave very, very, very detailed instructions.
Do you?
Yeah.
Have you ever thought of expanding, like maybe getting another one or two?
Yes and no. Part of the no is because I am such a control freak when it comes to it, that I don't think I would have the same relationship with another, if I had a place, you know, in Antibes or in Cannes or in Nice or something. So I wasn't completely on hand. It would be such a different kind of a business for me that I'm not sure that I really want to do that. Of course, I've had moments when I think, I must, you know, I should do it again. And then I think, oh God, this area is so saturated with, it really is. And I've worked, you know, very hard to have my own little niche to get a good, you know, we're sort of 80% full every year, 85%, which is kind of almost, I mean, I don't really want any more than that because, you know, it's quite nice to have time for like
relaxing, sure,
you know, maintenance and just with no one around. So so the thought of trying to market another place to this same level in the market as it is now with Airbnb being so enormous, and you know, because I have a real love-hate relationship with Airbnb. I mean,
I'm sure
I've been with it since they began. I've been with it since this Luminous Fugo has been on Airbnb since 2010, which, you know, is trailblazing stuff. I mean, most people hadn't heard of it back then. And it was such a different company. They used to come and they'd have cocktails and they'd give us little freebies. And I don't know if you can even remember, they used to have a logo that was blue, Airbnb written in blue. Their logo was completely different before they went for that red upside down heart A thing. And I've got all this merchandising in that Airbnb blue because they used to care. It used to be the caring, sharing community. And now they're just... you know, mega bucks.
Big business.
I mean,
sure.
But, you know, like I say, love, hate, because I, of course, use them to travel myself sometimes, although I do always, if I found a place on Airbnb, I always try and find the host direct if possible, which is what I always encourage people to do.
So how do you do that? That's a very good tip right there. How do you find, because we still use Airbnb too, but I agree. I mean, obviously, every host I've ever met says, please just call me direct because you're not paying fees.
Yeah.
It's just a better...
Well, the tricks that I try and, you know, let people know to try and do is look at all the photos very carefully. Usually, a host who wants to be found direct will put some sort of hints in the photos or in the text. Like, if you look through all my photos, you will see Lumasugo written in places. Like, for instance, I have a folder, a welcome folder on the table, which, welcome to Lumasugo and all the information about local restaurants and markets and, places like that in it. But it's on the cover, it says www.lumasugo.com. And I have that in a photo on Lumasugo, on the Airbnb listing. I hope Airbnb isn't listening. Saying, I don't
think we're quite that big yet. Don't worry.
Yeah, you're okay. You're safe.
Well, this may be the click that.
Yeah.
It's it's a picture. It's just a picture of the layout of of the table, the welcome table, and in it there's that. So if you look closely, you can see my direct website address, and there are other.
Great tip.
So you can try and get, because the algorithm, the bots can't pick that out. Obviously, I can't type in my actual direct address. Right. The other way I do it is because of the blog. I say in my blurb, I've been writing a blog called Lumasugo, all about things to do in this area. Thinking, please look up my blog, and because Lumasugo is a unique name, I made it up. It doesn't, it does mean something. That's another story, but there is no other Lumasugo anywhere in the world. If you type that in, you will find me. Now, obviously, not every host is going to have such a unique name and so easily to find. So the other thing you can do is reverse search on Google with images. Take an image from their listing and try and find it elsewhere. Because most of us, again, those of us who want to be found independently, directly, will have a core amount of the same photos everywhere, so that they come up. You'll find the same photos on my website as on, through my Facebook page, not on Instagram, because that's a different whole kettle of fish. But, so you can find things like that. But I think the real clue is to read the text carefully and look at the photos carefully.
Okay.
Also, if there's any clue about, you can't usually give your surname, but, you can, so many people are on social media nowadays that you can try and sort of work out something, especially, again, I'm lucky in that I've got an unusual name, Phoebe. So Phoebe, Gîte, it might come up. I mean, and also that might come up because of my blog. And that's, why I work so hard at it. It wouldn't come up if somebody just has 3 apartments in Antibes and a website. I mean, their name isn't going to come up. But I think the main thing is really look for those clues.
Do some detective work.
Yeah. No, you have
to like that.
Because there are plenty of people who don't want to deal direct. They just like the ease of it, their place being on Airbnb. But
you can always tell those people, though, they have and there's a lot of them in the U.S., so I know that for a fact, where they have the entry-list keypad. They just send you the code, and it doesn't matter when you get there,
Yeah,
you never see
really
them
interested. You never. In fact, we were at one place here in Washington State not long after we moved here, and even though it was full on pandemic and everybody was in lockdown, we just went to this Airbnb just to get away,
absolutely,
just to breathe different air for a few days. And so we did this, and we saw this couple with their dogs, and we knew the people had dogs because of the Airbnb, the way that was written, and they were just staring at the house, and you could just tell that they were either the owners or managers, or they were obviously involved in it somehow because they were quite interested. I even waved to them, like, you can come over, I don't mind.
Yeah.
But it was just really funny. But yeah, that in the States especially, I think they really love that anonymity. They don't want to deal like us. I don't know. It's sad.
So what are the specialties of your region?
Food specialties?
Yeah, food and wine.
Okay, well, obviously the most famous thing that is world renowned, of course, is the niçoise salad. I mean, it's on menus all over the world, and that does mean salad from Nice. So that is kind of the most obvious and most easiest thing to say. But probably my favorite thing is more like a street food, which is called soca, and it's a chickpea pancake. It's basically, it's made on a huge open, a huge wood fire oven, a bit like a pizza oven, but it's kind of like a dome. and it's made on this massive copper dish, flat copper dish, but about almost a meter wide. And it's literally olive oil, chickpea flour, water, and salt and pepper. And it's kind of flame char grilled, and then served thin, like a crepe. Sort of, they don't serve it as neatly as a crepe. It's not folded up like a crepe. It's sort of served in more like crumbs, bits. They sort of cut it up like this. But it's very much street food, which is quite rare in France to eat while you walk around. It's very much you sit in France to eat in general. But soccer is one rare thing. There are soccer restaurants, and it's really from Nice. You can get it in Antibes, and you can get it in Cannes, and you get it at local fêtes. When the village has a fête, someone will come around with a soccer oven. But you won't find it in Marseille. You won't find it, certainly won't find it in Lyon. It's really, really local to here. And oh my God, it's so delicious.
Wow.
So that's completely the most local thing. Soccer, SOCCA.
Really?
I believe it's similar to farinata in Italy, maybe. I might have got that wrong, so don't quote me on that one.
Okay.
Otherwise, this area, of course, is rosé wine area. The Provence wines are delicious. And we're only about 30 minutes from the nearest vineyard, so you can go on lots of wine tasting tours in this area. There's also...
do you have connections with any of the vineyards? Like that we could just show up at and do tastings? Do they do that in that area?
I certainly could recommend places. Yes, I've been on a few that myself that I would totally recommend to tell people to go to, and also have a good connection with a tour here who they take you to all the places so that you can not worry about driving.
Not drive,
yeah. And it's a great tour. It's really good. They either pick you up from here from my place, or there's a central meeting point in Nice or whatever, and you can take these tours. But a new up and coming thing is, and I think it's probably worldwide really, is craft beers are becoming huge here now.
Oh yeah,
more and more artisanal beer, and it's exploding here. There are so many breweries all over the place. We've got them in the little villages just down the road from here. And again, I have some good connections with friends who are brewers who have a brewery and a shop that sells just about every beer you can find in the area, and huge world selection. So that's something you don't really think of in France. Especially not South France, where it's so famous for our rosé wine, which is, unbeatable and delicious. But not everyone is a wine fan, and lots of people love their beer. So I can, very much advise on the beer scene here, which is growing hugely and fantastic. It's lovely.
Has the beer scene evolved to include food? I know, like in the UK, you can find some really outstanding gastropubs that are chef owned and that sort of thing. But that's more, I think, food oriented. But it's also in line with the pub culture.
I'd say not too much yet. I think that might come. I know some of the breweries do try and do kind of events and apéro and and tastings and pair it with food, but in general, it isn't. France is still very much. They love the wine, and it would be very rare to go to a restaurant here and to drink beer with your food. So It's still very much for pubs and bars, where food isn't such a thing. And of course for home, for people having their apéro at home and things. But I can't, and of course, I'm sure there are some, but I can't.
Not yet.
A particular place where you could have a really yummy meal and have a good selection of beer. For me, if you want that good selection of beer, you're going to a pub, a bar, where there might be some snacks, but it won't be great food. It won't be bad food, but it won't be the focus of the place. You're
still in southern France, so yeah.
Yeah, there's the wine is still obviously very, very dominant. And obviously also what people don't realize is the Côte de Provence and this local area has lots of red and white wine as well. It's not all rosé. But rosé is what sort of everyone thinks of the south of France. And it's definitely, I think had a really bad sort of reputation 20 years ago or so. People used to think it was very sweet and you weren't really a real wine drinker if you drank rosé, but that's just not the case anymore. You get some really amazing rosés that are crisp, dry, and, as complex and complicated as any red or white.
But the weather in France, southern France especially, is pretty mild. I mean, you have good weather most of the year. February, I was down there that one year in Menton and for the Lemon Festival, and it was freezing cold. So I'm sure you get a few cold snaps, but overall, the weather is pretty nice, right?
It's amazing. It's a great climate. Yeah.
Yeah. So I always thought rosé was a summer wine, but is that true in southern France, or is it?
Yeah, there's still, funnily enough, there comes a stage when you let go of the rosé and move into the red somewhere around November. You think, okay,
when the Nouveau Beaujolais comes out, right?
Yeah, sort of around then you start to think, no, it's time to drink red. But it's only a short season because by about February or March, you're starting to think, oh, look, it's definitely rosé time again because it's so sunny and lovely again. I mean, that's a generalization. And I think often still in restaurants, for example, when my husband and I go out, I'm not a big white wine drinker. I love red and I love rosé, and he likes them all, but he might have ordered a fish and not necessarily want red wine with that. So we almost always still order rosé in restaurants. In this area where the selection's great, we wouldn't necessarily in northern France where in February where the rosé selection is rubbish, but down here in a restaurant there's always good selection of rosé. But it is still, you're right, it is still a summery thing. So I wouldn't sit in front of a log fire because it can be cold here and drink a glass of rosé. No, it's got to be red when you're by a fire.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is funny. So the one rosé story that I have, because like you said, all these different preconceptions that we have about rosé and rosé drinkers. We were in Tunisia. I want to say it must have been a spring break trip. So
December.
Oh, December. Okay, so it was a winter trip. Yeah. So it was,
and we were in Le Kef.
Winter. Le Kef, which is right on the Algerian border. Up in the mountains. It's cold. We had checked into a little hotel and had found a place that the person at the desk had recommended for dinner. So we walked out and around the corner and up into this place, and it was packed. It was hopping, but it was full of middle-aged men, all mustachioed and sitting at all these tables. We didn't really see much food, so we weren't sure about that, but they were having this great time. They're all drinking rosé, every single one of them. Which
it's absolutely not the image you'd ever.
We walked in and said, okay, first of all, we're in Tunisia. Why are they drinking wine at all?
Yeah, absolutely true.
But they were. And then, rosé. So, we had to do like the locals.
Smashing all the preconceptions in one fell swoop.
Every single one. And we did have
we drank rosé
as well.
Yeah.
It was fun.
That was funny. So your gîte is near Nice, obviously. Is it part of the Nice urban area, suburban area? Or
not
is
really.
It further out?
No, well, technically not. The Nice metropolitan area goes up to Cannes-sur-Mer, which is sort of 2 towns away. In between that, there's Villeneuve-Loubet, and then there's us. But the thing is about the Côte d'Azur is it is very urban on the coast, and basically towns spread into towns. On the coast, there's no, countryside between the towns. But we're 10, 11 kilometers inland, almost directly halfway between. Well, we're half an hour to Antibes, half an hour to Cannes, and half an hour to Nice. So equal distance between all of those. And once you get up into the sort of Arrière-Pays, the back country where we are, there is countryside between towns, forest and things. So we're not in the Nice metropolitan area, but it's really not far, and there's a direct bus from 500 meters or 200 meters down the road. There's a direct bus into Nice, and for instance, when we go out for dinner at night, we'll often go to Nice or Antibes or Cannes. They're equal distance. And this is one of the beauties of our location, and almost every single review that we've ever got, on all the different platforms, TripAdvisor, Airbnb, and etc. Nearly everyone says so well located, because we're this sort of equal distance, and then half an hour in the other direction, you can be in the snow, in the mountains. I mean, literally, skiing and anything in between. So we've kind of got the best of both worlds. We're very close to France's fifth city. That's Nice. It's a proper big, dynamic, exciting university city with culture and museums and festivals and the works, and forest and snow and adventure sports and all the little medieval villages all around. So very, very well placed. Only 15 minutes to the beach, but being 15 minutes away, we're not in the mega crowds in July and August. It's our town is quite quiet. Nowhere's quiet on the Côte d'Azur, but it's not crowded. It's very, very conveniently placed to visit this area.
So I agree. July and August is unbearably hot, in my opinion. But when is probably the best times to visit? Is it like spring and fall, would you say? Or
yeah, like most places, out of season spring and fall are lovely, but not, shouldn't forget winter here, to be honest, because actually, Nice got UNESCO World Heritage status in July last year. And it got it for being a winter resort. This is what people forget.
Really?
The English would come to winter. They use that verb, to winter.
Yeah.
They would come to winter on the Côte d'Azur, because the climate in the winter is so mild. And it's not just so mild because cold, and you can deal with cold. It's so sunny. This is what's so lovely. I get all my friends in the north of, people in Paris, and my family in the UK and friends all over the world are just like, I'm so sick of the grey by this stage of winter.
Right.
We just don't have grey. I mean, look, I feel embarrassed when I put pictures on Instagram and my family WhatsApp groups and this and that say, look at this blue sky again. Winter is stunning. It really is. And you said you came in February and had bad weather, but that is properly rare. In general,
it was
February just gorgeous.
But even then, it was cold, but it was sunny.
Yeah, you see, it was sunny.
It was cold and windy. Yeah.
And it's the sun that just gives you this kind of, you don't get that kind of seasonal affective disorder. You're not sort of, because there's always these blue skies. And so I would say, honestly, any time of year is great. Avoid July and August if you don't have to come then, if you're not stuck to school children times.
Sure.
But if you have kids in the school system and that's the only time you can come, there are ways of, having fun here. There really are great ways. We can advise of all these places, but yes, don't underestimate the heat here. It really does get properly hot, in the high 30s often, which,
and like you said, most places are not air conditioned.
Yeah, exactly. Which, we're not, and we make it very clear in our ad that, in all our listings that we're not, because it's obviously a deal maker for some people. Mm-hmm. But it's how we like, it's all sort of part of our environmental side of things, as well as just we find other ways to keep cool. But
do you have shutters? Shutters for your windows? Yeah.
Shutters, and because the Nice shutters that open sort of like this. They do this.
Yes, we learned that. Yeah. So when we were in the south of France the last time, we learned that it's all about the way you work your shutters in the morning, you work your shutters in the evening to get the best wafting, the best breezes through.
That's how we do it, and that's how we. It is an art, and some people can't be bothered. It's a faff to them, whereas I love it. I love opening the shutters in the morning and going, oh, look at that, another gorgeous day. And I love closing them in the evening. It's for me, but I know some people find it a whole faff and can't be bothered. But no, I think it's part of the charm and I like that. But to get back to your question about the best time of year, I think October is one of my absolute favorite months here. It's really gorgeous. The sea is still warm enough to swim in. The crowds have completely gone. And the evenings are cool enough to, want to maybe snuggle up, but the days are still absolutely gorgeous. And you get a similar sort of thing in March is often really lovely. April can have a bit more rain. May can be mixed, but March and June can be great. June's already starting to be more crowded.
Get busy.
But March, April, May are lovely. There can be more rain though. But the thing is the sea hasn't warmed up yet. So This is why I prefer autumn, that the sea's still warm. On the other hand, if you're not interested in swimming in the sea, spring is gorgeous for all the flowers, spring flowers and that kind of thing. So it depends on your interests. If you're not going to
we would probably go in spring because we're not going to go swimming.
Yeah.
Spring is beautiful. It's fresh. Everything's starting again, as spring is anywhere in the world. So it's lovely and less crowded. There's a thing, the Cannes Film Festival happens every year in May, and there's a tradition down here saying that it is always guaranteed bad weather during the Cannes Film Festival when all the stars are in their strappy little dresses and they have to go up the red carpet and freezing. So it's tradition that it's really bad weather in May. Just, I don't know why. Obviously, it isn't for the whole 2 weeks of the festival.
Yeah, of course.
It does seem to be a little blip in the meteorological calendar that there's always some stormy weather in May.
That's funny.
So, yeah.
Well, you bring up festivals. What other festivals would you recommend different times of the year? Like I said, we went to the Lemon Festival, which I thought was amazing. I totally loved it.
I love the Lemon Festival. It's so unique. It's so different. It's so colorful and usually such lovely weather. And at the same time, Nice Carnival is on, and that's great fun too. Which the sort of unique side of the Nice Carnival is it has something called the flower battles. I don't know if you saw that in the Menton one as well.
No.
But starting about now, the mimosa is all coming out. We have vast mimosa forests here, like the biggest in Europe, just forests and forests of mimosa. And so these flower battles is basically the floats going through the town are covered in flowers, and they throw them out to the spectators to grab. And so you come home with armfuls of flowers. I'm not quite sure of the environmental side of it, but I think the vast majority is grown specifically for the festivals. But if you put that aside and just get into the spirit of it, it's such fun, and it's so colorful and so pretty with all these flowers. So those are the winter ones. Then what I really like is all the little village festivals. The villages around here, most of them are known for something. So like there's a village up the road, Le Bar-sur-Loup, which is famous for its growing of bitter oranges, and they have a bitter orange festival around Easter every year. And the whole village just is decked out in orange, and everything's about this orange. And then the neighboring village is all about violets. They grow violets, and they're famous for their violets, and they have a violet festival. And all these little festivals are just so kind of unique and so local and so typical and so culturally important to these villages. And that's the sort of thing I do have on my blog.
I was just going to ask that. You beat me to it.
Yeah.
Because I think that's important, and that's how I decide where I'm going sometimes, is what festival might be in town.
Well, I have a category of local annual events. And so, you can go into that category and you can sort of see which festivals there are. In October, which is, as I said, a month that I love, there's the festivals called transhumance, when they bring the animals down from the high mountains, because what people do forget about the Côte d'Azur is that we are mountains, real mountains. The department is called the Alpes Maritimes. So there's a clue there, the Alps. We have the Alps, within 2,000 to 3,000 meter peaks within an hour and a half of Nice. So they, in the end of the autumn, they bring all the sheep and the cows down from the high pastures to the villages. And there's lots of festivals that go on around that. And those are just fantastic because they're so rural and so old, steeped in history. You kind of think, oh my God, what century
We've done that all over, but not in France. So now we need to go to France to do it.
That's right.
Those
are amazing festivals.
Ones,
I agree with you.
Yeah. Otherwise, there are lots of other bigger festivals, particularly music festivals in the summer, or varying categories. World music or techno or classical or whatever. Again, I've written about all those different festivals. Lots of these things, of course, haven't happened in the last 2 years, but hopefully there'll be more this year.
Someday
and, they will come back. Because, for instance, the Jazz à Juin Jazz Festival in Juan-les-Pins is, it celebrated its 50th anniversary before the COVID hit. So I guess it's probably about 52 years old now. And it attracts all the big names in jazz from all over the world. It has absolutely every jazz player you can ever think of has played there. And it's in, anyway, it's a summer thing, July, and Nice has a jazz festival as well, and they're really lovely because you are outside under, massive parasol pines on the beach and, with mega names in the music industry.
All right. Cool. Well, we really have kept you much longer than I expected to keep you, but I knew that we would get along and have plenty to talk about. Unless there's anything else you can think of, either about the Gîte or funny story or whatever, I guess we'll start signing off then. Well,
I could go on forever, and I do talk a lot, so I probably should shut up. One sort of tiny aside and a bit of a plug. My dad wrote his autobiography last year, and he published it.
Oh,
so there's obviously a lot about
seen that.
It's my dad. A lot of it is my life too, and you get the background of where this love of travel came from, because I've never met a more travel person than my dad, who writes very, very well as well. So I'm always happy to plug his book a bit. It's called Lucky Dip.
And what's his
name is Richard Dip. Lucky Dip by Richard Thomas. He was a diplomat, and he considered that he had a lucky life, and that what he got out of it, I don't know, is a lucky dip in America, is it the same thing as what kids put their hands in to pull something out of?
No, we don't have that.
No, well, in English, it's like a kid's game, which you put your hand into this big barrel or something, and you pull out a present, a gift, a surprise. And therefore it's sort of a bit of a play on words on that, because he figures he not only was a lucky diplomat, but he won, at the
big prize,
pulling out of life stakes.
Yeah. Yes.
But, he's...
Well, I agree with that, because with our job, which is very similar, it's not a diplomatic job what we had, but when people would be brand new, I told them, I said, you just won the golden ticket. This is the life. And
yeah, it really is.
So I totally understand what you're talking about.
And so, he's a great writer anyway, but his life is just amazing. So like I say, it's all about travel. He went to Bhutan several times in the 70s. He's, been absolutely all over Africa. He's just, it's in my blood,
Yeah.
And not to forget my mum as well. My mum, is Australian, and she left Australia, went to Ghana on her first ever job abroad, met my bloody English dad, and never went back. So, she
isn't that amazing?
Then, had this amazing life. What you can't even begin to think nowadays, of course, is that she didn't go back to Australia for 10 years. It's just impossible to imagine that now, isn't it? Because relatively, flights were so expensive, and just.
Well, and worse. Because we lived this too. There was no social media. Every phone call was expensive. And even snail mail, as we like to call it now. You basically wanted to use air postage, the real thin paper and everything, because everything costs.
And the aerograms, the aerograms that you folded 3 times and licked.
Exactly. People can't imagine.
No, and so that that's my background. I come from these 2 amazing travelers who just and so there's his book. Lucky Dip.
Oh.
I guess it's the other way
Okay,
around.
well, I definitely will put
So
that in the
that's
show notes as
the
well.
Lucky Dip thing there.
Yeah.
I love it. I
Pulling it
love
up.
it. That's
Um,
great.
But and my Gîte is open,
That's
We're
right.
not actually
All right.
shut. When anyone can actually
Someday we're going to
travel,
get there, I
please,
swear.
please come and stay.
All right, Phoebe.
We will.
I love talking to you. I hope that we can get
Yeah, no, it's
together in
great to
person
meet you as
sometime.
well. It's lovely.
If you come over to Washington, don't forget us, please. Washington State.
Oh,
No.
I'd absolutely love to, but oh my God, it seems like
far
a
away.
pipe dream
I
at the
know.
moment.
Well, thank you for
All
joining
right.
us.
Well, you take care
That's great.
and enjoy your Saturday evening, what's left of it.
Thanks. Well,
Bye
enjoy your
now.
Saturday day.
Okay.
Yes,
Bye.
exactly. Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks for listening to this episode of Streets and Eats. If you liked what you heard, please show us some love, hit the like button, and leave us a review. Maybe even subscribe so you don't miss any future podcasts. Also, we'd love it if you joined us on our Facebook private group, Streets and Eats, where we just have an ongoing conversation about all things travel. Ciao for now.